All right, welcome back, my friends. My name is James LaValle, and this is page 3 of your next chapter. So, for this morning's topic, I want to be talking about excuses, distractions, and identity shift. If you're here again today, that tells me something important about you, something that you may not even see yet. Most people just drift through life, they wait for life to change on its own. But you showed up, you pressed play, and you're choosing a direction instead of drifting. And that matters. As I mentioned in previous podcasts, I am a big reader and continue to reading to gain knowledge. It wasn't always that way, and I got a full podcast planned out for that. So um, for now, just know that I've learned that the best education is not from schools, but it's from living life and reading books. The best education comes after formal education, and life begins. That is, of course, if you continue to pursue learning. I've decided I want to keep learning and growing as long as I live, and you should too. So, recently, one of the books I've been reading is called The Obstacle is the Way. Um, and last Saturday, after the podcast, I was reading the chapter, The Art of Acquiescence. And I'd like to read right now what the author, Ryan Holiday, had to say in that book. So, the ancients and the not so ancients used the word fate far more frequently than us because they were better acquainted with and exposed to how capricious and random the world could be. Events were considered to be the will of the gods. The fates were forces that shaped our lives and destinies, often not with much consent. Letters used to be signed Dio Volente, or God willing, because who knew what would happen? Think of George Washington putting everything he had into the revolution and then saying, the event is in the hand of God. Or Eisenhower writing to his wife on the eve of the Allied invasion at Sicily. Everything we could think of has been done. The troops are fit. Everybody is doing his best. The answer is in the lap of the gods. These were not guys prone to settling or leaving the details up to other people, but they understood ultimately that what happened would happen, and they'd go from there. It's time to be humble and flexible enough to acknowledge the same in our own lives, that there is always someone or something that could change the plan, and that person is not us. As the saying goes, man proposes, but God disposes. As fate would have it, heaven forbid, nature permitting, or Murphy's Law, whatever version you prefer, it's all the same. Not that much has changed between their time and ours. They were just more cognizant of it. Look, if we want to use the metaphor that life is a game, it means playing the dice or the chips or the cards where they fall. Playing it where it lies, as the golfer would say. But to do that, first you have to accept. And the quicker you accept, the better you can play. The way life is gives you plenty to work with, plenty to leave an imprint on. Taking people and events as they are is quite enough material already. Follow where the events take you, like rolling water down a hill. It always gets to the bottom eventually, doesn't it? Because A, you're robust and resilient enough to handle whatever occurs. B, you can't do anything about it anyway. And C, you're looking at a big enough picture and a long enough timeline, and whatever you have to accept is still only a negligible blip on the way to your goal. We're indifferent, and that's not a weakness. So I went back later that night and reread it again because of what Holiday wrote hit a nerve for me. It reminds us of something that we don't like to admit. We can prepare, we can plan, we can give it everything we got, but the final outcome is still in God's hand. And that raises a hard question. One I had to face myself. Have I truly done everything within my ability to reach the outcome that I say I want? Or have I been waiting for the stars to align, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for a sign or permission instead of taking action? Because here's the truth: you can't pray for a harvest and refuse to plant the seed. You can't ask God to open a door if you're not willing to walk through it. And you can't build a new chapter with the same habits, same patterns, and the same identity that built the old one. So, as I was reading that Saturday night, I decided that I was going to read that passage today for page 3. And then the following morning, Sunday morning, our pastor preached a message and he confirmed everything that I was thinking. And he said, God will do his part, but he won't do our part. And then it hit me. He shared that there are two major obstacles holding us back from doing our part. And does any of this sound familiar? He said, the first obstacle is excuses. Excuses kept us from seeing opportunities. Excuses kept us from taking responsibilities. Excuses kept us from experiencing change. And excuses just lead us straight into that famous definition of insanity. I'm sure you've heard it. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. I could talk a good game. I could dream big. I could make all the plans in the world. But when it came to time to act, I had an excuse, a reason, justification, story for why now was not the right time. And here's the thing about excuses: they feel true, they feel reasonable, they feel justified, but they keep you stuck in the same chapter, rereading that same page over and over again, living the same old patterns. The second obstacle is distraction. He read a line saying, if Satan can't destroy you with a bad thing, he'll distract you with anything to keep you from the best thing. I thought, well, yeah, I can tell that that's a bad thing, so I'm not going to do that. But just being distracted is okay, right? Because distraction doesn't always look bad. Sometimes it looks like busyness. Sometimes it looks like good intentions. Sometimes it's just helping everyone else while ignoring the work that God put in my hands. I go out to my garage shop to start working on a project, and I see the neighbors out in front, and soon my wife comes out to talk to me, but I'm not in the garage. She looks around, and there I am across the street talking with my neighbors. Again, being nice and talking to my neighbors isn't a bad thing. In fact, that's actually a good thing. But still, distraction is anything that pulls your attention away from the person you're becoming or the business you're building. Recent distractions I had were silly video games on my phone, and when I stopped those because I realized they were bad, I started replacing them with TikTok videos. And then you know how that goes. One more, and then, oh, that swipe one more, and suddenly I realize a half an hour's passed by. So distractions don't have to be bad to be destructive. As I said earlier, distractions are anything that pulls your attention away from the person you're becoming. So let me ask you the same two questions our pastor asked us on Sunday. Excuse me. Um, what one excuse, if you threw it off, would create the greatest change in your life? And what one distraction, if you removed it, would open the door to the life you're trying to build? I want you to sit with those for a minute or two. Write them down if you have to, and read them again and again until you have an answer. And that answer may change as you go, but they're not small questions. So let me read them again. What one excuse, if you threw it off, would create the greatest change in your life? And what one distraction, if you removed it, would open the door to the life you're trying to build? Because this is where the identity shift begins. You don't rise to the level of your goals. Unfortunately, you fall to the level of your identity. You can't build a future with the same self story that built your past. Identity is the engine, habits are the exhaust. Let me share how the identity shaped me long before I understood it. When I was in the Navy, I served as a cook on submarines. I made rank pretty quickly, and at the 9-year mark, I was an E6, taking the E7 exam for advancement. I passed the exam the first time. I was so proud of myself, but the way the Navy works, they take all the sailors who pass the test, and they pick the top percentage for the actual advancement. At that time, my rating, they were only advancing 2 or 3 cooks to chief petty officer. And you know what happened? I wasn't one of them. Following year, I went back and took the test again, since they only offered it once a year. And the same thing happened. I passed the test, but the board decided I wasn't one of the top 3 cooks in the entire Navy submarine force. Now, mind you, I never met this board, so they never interviewed me. They didn't even know me. It was all by what my record said about me. What did my previous evaluations say about me? So the same process went on for the next 8 years, taking the exam, passing it, and being denied advancement, and taking me all the way up until my last, you know, year, the 20-year point. At that time, if you haven't made chief, you were forced to retire. So to me, I never achieved the level that I had hoped for. Then after retirement, I should be able to get a good job easy, right? Retired sailor, 20 years of experience and good conduct medals. But no, that didn't equate. I didn't have a degree. So I signed on to several temp agencies to get me working on temporary assignments, going to school in the evenings to try and get my degree. And it paid better than starting at the bottom again, but that still came with a price. These temp positions were only for a week or two, sometimes maybe a month, but when the work was done, I had to start looking for another job. Then I got into contract work, and it was similar, starting. Something just happened to my camera. Anyway, I started back into contracts, working at contracts, and that was very similar. Starting pay was better, but again, once that contract ended, I had to look for another job again. So at one point, I was struggling to find another contract, and I thought, I'm going to go to a professional agency and have them fix my resume, refine it, make it look better, hoping to get better leads. So I can't really remember what I paid for it, but it was just a substantial amount. Excuse me, it's easy for you to say. So, substantial amount, but if I landed a better job, it would be worth it. Well, when I got it back, the changes were significant. My resume looked much better, more presentable. But the most important aspect of this story is that the person who did the work said that I could expect $125,000 to $150,000 salary with my qualifications and previous experience. So up to this point, I was lucky to get between 49 and 50,000 a year. So I couldn't believe that I was worth 3 to 4 times more than I was currently making. But disbelief is a powerful thing. If you don't believe you're worth more, you won't ask for more. Identity always sets the ceiling, not your qualifications. So you probably figured it out already. My next job was still right around $50,000, even with my beautiful new resume. So I had built up my own identity inside my head because of the ceiling that was put on me during my Navy career and then reinforced through my contract positions. I didn't believe I was worth any more than the identity of myself that I had allowed. So I want you to try something simple, not a commitment or a vow, not a New Year's resolution or anything like that. It's just an experiment. Try on a new identity for yourself for just one day. What if you saw yourself as someone who follows through? What if you believed you were capable of more than just survival? What if you treated yourself like someone worth investing in? Or get this, what if you saw yourself as someone worthy of $150,000 more than you're making right now? So you don't have to become the whole future version of yourself today. You just have to take one step that proves you're becoming that person. So here's the practice for today or for this week. Do one small action your future self would thank you for. And not necessarily the biggest action, maybe not the perfect action, just the next right action. Because every chapter begins the same way, with a single sentence, a single step, a single moment where you decide, I'm not who I was yesterday, and I'm becoming someone new. You're not doing this alone. We're walking this out together, and with everyone else that's listening who are choosing to grow. So that's where we'll pick it up next week. Go ahead and hit the like button and follow. Leave me a comment of the one thing that you're going to change this week and maybe how you accomplished it. All right, my friends. Until next Saturday, let's keep walking this out together. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up for yourself. And I'll see you next week for page 4 of your next chapter.